Right, hello guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I've aggregated a bunch of sources to find out the truth, the story, the explanation of why Pochettino and Chelsea have split ways by mutual consent, which by all accounts it has been. I've got a bunch of sources here. I'm going to talk about who's not going to replace him as a manager. In a different video, I will look at managerial candidates and talk about how Chelsea can potentially move forward with a new guy in the Stamford Bridge dugout. But for the moment, I'm going to go for a few quotes here that I found, different journalists, different broadcasters who have given different reasons why this has happened, okay? It's important to note that by the fact I'm doing this isn't me saying, yes, I wanted him to walk away or I wanted him to be sacked. Most of you who watch the channel will know that my position on Pochettino was I thought he was the guy before the guy, even if I had reservations that he was going to be the manager to lead Chelsea back to the top, and where apparently our ambitions lie from this new ownership group. But he has gone, and it has been by mutual consent, and there has been reasons that have come out since.
You ain't so tough with that bad boy talk. I'ma get it how I'm living, I'ma walk the walk. Outline my lines, I rap through thought.
Right, so thank you for joining me, guys. Today I'll be citing the likes of Jacob Steinberg from The Guardian, a couple of quotes from The Athletic, David Ornstein, Miguel Delaney, and Fabrizio Romano. So there is a lot there. There's a lot of good, reputable sources there. A lot of people probably being briefed as well, let's be honest. And we will get into it. So I thank you for joining me as always. If you want to support the content, jump aboard the good ship Football Therapy. Subscribe to the channel if you want to. Hit the bell if you choose to. And as always, I'll thank you for liking the video. I'll always welcome your comments. And, you know, if you want to share the video to support me, that's lovely too. All right. So Pochettino did leave by mutual consent. Of course, there was a statement in the Chelsea official statement. He says, "Thank you to the Chelsea ownership group and sporting directors for the opportunity to be part of the football club's history. The club is now well positioned to keep moving forward in the Premier League and in Europe for years to come." Now, he basically, what we understand now since my recording yesterday, there was a meeting on Monday after his review, and they all decided that they weren't going to keep going. But they didn't sign the documents then to release him and get his compensation and contracts and stuff. They went, you know what, let's not make any hasty decisions. It looks like we're moving in the right direction collectively here. But let's sleep on it and meet tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning, and see how we feel. Speak to your family, reflect on the ambition. Can we work together? And they all met up again Tuesday morning. This was the sporting directors, Badadek Barley, and Pochettino and his representatives. Todd Boehly, I think, was probably on the call digitally. Todd Boehly, of course, met Pochettino on Friday for dinner. I speculate and wondered if he gave him a bit of a heads up of where the wind's blowing. But by that time, everyone was, yeah, let's end this. And it was mutual. And Pochettino's noises he was making for a long, long time, it sounded like he was unhappy. Now, Pochettino signed up to Chelsea to be the manager, knowing it was a certain project, right? Knowing that it was bringing all these kids in and, probably will sell some homegrown assets because it's a little bit of an edge in the market and a loophole, and will sign some long contracts because of the amortization. And obviously they've changed the rules, but Chelsea took advantage of that. But they came in, they drew up this big plan and said, right, if we stick to this plan, this is taking advantage of the system and will get us ahead. And he was like, yeah, no worries. And Pochettino said that, right? He said early doors and multiple press conferences, yeah, don't worry, I'm cool with it. Over the transfer window, people were saying, Poch, don't you think this is mental? And he's like, no, I know this is supposed to be happening. It's all good. Now, I speculated that he has sort of maybe not moved the goalpost, but changed his position a little bit after working at Chelsea. And Chelsea maybe are looking for a little bit of more of a yes man, but he leaves thinking, actually, yeah, this isn't for me. And they're like, yeah, you're not really for us. And we'll get into that in just a moment. It's known as, from The Independent, Miguel Delaney talking quite negatively about Chelsea and the circus, understandably, as many broadcasters and outlets are. It's known Pochettino was already aggravated about the potential sales of Gallagher and Trevoh Chalobah. Of course, he himself will become of immediate interest to Bayern Munich, Juventus and Manchester United. The German club have already considered the possibility Yes, and it should be acknowledged that this might not have been many options for Pochettino a few months ago, but Chelsea's good form sees him more a desired candidate. So Pochettino, I just want to get him out of the way first before we speak about the club and their position. He's done himself no damage, should I say, sorry. He's done himself no damage. He actually looks pretty good. 5-game winning streak, flew up into Europe. The players like him, and many people would have seen on social media, like Instagram. Most of the players are upset to see him go, right? They're like, Jackson's like, I wish we could stay together. Face palm emoji. Nonny's posting pictures of them smiling on the training ground. Cole Palmer says, thank you for making my dreams come true. He was like a liked guy, and I think that was known by the club, and they knew this was going to be an unfavourable decision for the players. So in terms of Pochettino moving away, he will have high stock. He knows, I look pretty good right now, even though, he didn't, you got to finals. Some people will actually, there's been some criticism that actually he doesn't have that driving force to get players over the line in finals, like an instilling of mentality. I don't know if that's fair, but people will point to how he flopped in, the cup final against Liverpool in extra time, stoppage time. There's a perception by some that some managers would instill a mentality that doesn't allow that to happen. And that might sound unfair on Poch, but obviously he hasn't got a record of winning finals. So there was a concern there. But there's a little bit of hypocrisy because they're looking for what seemingly is a bit of a yes man, but also a yes man who has the character to just like friggin' win all the time. And on those potential, and this isn't a video on potential replacements, but Romano has confirmed that Tuchel, in terms of the German coaches, Tuchel and Hansi Flick are not being considered to Chelsea. In fact, it's been confirmed elsewhere that no former Chelsea coach is returning. So not Thomas Tuchel, not Jose Mourinho, not Antonio Conte, and of course they are all free agents. So Hansi Flick is also a free agent, a senior manager as well, a big character. He is not going to be considered. So the stuff going around the news about the young managers is very much true, and of course we will do another video on that. I really like Sebastian Hoeneß from Stuttgart. I think he is a manager, and also if we could get Guirassy, the striker, as a 28-year-old senior striker, I think that could be the perfect combo to solve problems, but this isn't a video for that. I will talk about that another time. Right. So we will end on quotes from Ornstein in a moment, but I'm going to read this article from Jacob Steinberg of The Guardian that will hopefully give us a little bit more insight on what the Chelsea position is. So, it would have been different if Mauricio Pochettino had been willing to trust Chelsea's great restructuring that is going on. In the end, the problem for the Argentinian was that he joined a club who do not want a manager who has all the power. It's clear by now that anyone who hopes to last under Todd Boehly and Clearlake Capital has to collaborate with the board on everything, be open-minded about constructive criticism, and remember not to rock the boat too much when it comes to recruitment. Historically, very un-Chelsea, of course. You can't imagine someone like a Jose Mourinho doing this, but they believe this is the way the wind is blowing, and this is the way to create sustainable success, winning, not... And here comes the massive irony. The thumbs up emoji again. All right, let's just do the peace one. Let's get the balloons out of the way. That meme. Come on. Balloon. There we go. Jesus. Whoa, Chelsea's a circus. The balloons are appropriate. Yes, they believe that to find stability, you need to find the system. And the irony here is they've had 5 managers this ownership. Granted, the project is under the new sporting directors, and of course they have had a manager, but one, Pochettino, and he's sacked. And maybe in history they'll reflect on that signing of Pochettino as a positive one. He took us from 12th to 6th. They sounded out whether they could win with him. They didn't give him a long contract because of that, and they made a change. Obviously they'll be judged massively on the next appointment as well. So unfortunately that was never going to be Pochettino. Just as it was never going to be Thomas Tuchel, who lasted 7 games before being fired. Pochettino is 52 years old. He is a big, magnetic character and an experienced coach who believes his way is best. He was never going to listen to suggestions he could ease Chelsea's injury problems by reviewing his altering his training methods. Yes, so this is a big one, and it needs to be highlighted. It's not just The Guardian. There's other news outlets, sports broadcasters who have suggested, and I kind of had an inkling, that Pochettino has this old school way of training, this high-octane press, counter-press running, that I guess it works if you're Conor Gallagher, but it might be a contributing factor to a lot of injuries, and he wasn't willing to hear that. It's something that sort of followed him from PSG as well. I'm not saying that's definitively the case, but there is speculation, because of a little bit of history as well, that his training methods have caused, or have been a large contributing factor to the record-breaking injuries this season. And of course, he thinks his way is best. He doesn't want to listen to criticism. They want a more collaborative way of working. And a young coach would bring that, apparently. Inevitably, there is talk of an amicable split. Of course, Tuchel left under a cloud with his collapse of the relationship. A private equity fund managed by Bedadik Bali. He's talking about Clear Lake. Pochettino was better at managing upwards. He was more amiable figure than Tuchel. That, though, does not mean he did not have strong views about the way to run the club. Pochettino was not afraid of flexing his muscles when he spoke to the media in the second half of the season. He was not shy of making it clear that he wanted more control over signings. So yes, he signed up for a project in Chelsea knowing he wouldn't have control over signings, but then towards the end was like, actually, I want control. And it seemingly Chelsea held firm, saying, nah. The sporting directors, it would seem, believe they've made good signings. And there is actually some evidence for that. And they believe they can fix the problems and do it in the way that suits the project and the long-term planning. Now, Michael Cox, who's a great author, I've got his book Zonal Marking on my bookshelf there. He wrote an article on The Athletic, how this firing of Pochettino undermines the Chelsea project in terms of it's trending in the right way. Actually, Pochettino did as good a job as possible, and that will undermine the story of why they sacked Poch. The reason why it wasn't the results, it was the relationship thing, maybe the injuries, and we'll get onto a style of play in a moment. But in that article from Michael Cox, he actually does a lot of praising to the Chelsea sporting directors, who of course have caught a lot of heat, and this won't be a popular decision with the Chelsea fans to sack Pochettino, for obvious reasons, but he highlighted their work so far in terms of recruitment and how they've gone about it in sales and stuff, and actually goes, yeah, it's actually pretty good if you look at it. And if you looked at it since those two are working together, their body of work as sporting directors for recruitment of young players and identifying good profiles and talents that will work in the Premier League is pretty positive, and you could argue that just work isn't done in terms of finishing the squad. Fine. And then you analyse since they've been working together, their first managerial appointment working together, what I believe was Pochettino, because I don't think they were both there via Potter. Correct me if I'm wrong. But and Pochettino in theory was a good appointment, and it didn't end too badly. It ended with them both walking away. Obviously, the next appointment will be the ultimate, judgment, won't it? There'll be the ultimate, all right, if you get this wrong, then you guys are simply not good. We'll talk about what the fans want as well, because Pochettino wasn't unanimously backed. He had the majority of Chelsea fans, but it was never fully over, on board, whether it was because they didn't like his football, they thought it was too risky and unstructured, or the Tottenham links, but we'll get into that as well. Let's finish this. Yeah, Chelsea have spent over £1 billion since Clearlake and Bowley bought the club from Abramovich 2 years ago. We're not willing to alter their approach to suit the man who carried them to 6th place. Interesting use of language there, because they did have big ambitions for the season. Igbali, whose voice carries the most weight, was unsure from Pochettino from the start. So that is interesting. Igbali's voice carries the most weight because he's like the representative of Clearlake. Clearlake Capital own more than 60% of Chelsea, so they're by far the biggest equity holders. He's kind of like the Roman Abramovich in that case. I always thought Pochettino was his guy, but I guess he was Bowley's guy, and that might be something to do with the dinner. Interesting. Would anything change his mind? Losing the Carabao Cup final to Liverpool's kids did not help, nor did the failure to challenge for the Champions League qualification. Ultimately, Pochettino could never quite solidify his position. It is hard not to conclude that his great mistakes was failing to realise this was not the club conditioned to serve a manager. If power is being doled out, then it's heading straight in the direction, of course, the sporting directors, who are both close to Egbali. It is Stuart and Winstanley who have implemented Chelsea's youth-first policy that Pochettino, who was popular with the players, made it work by making sense of an immature squad, and that's not really registered. It's instructive that the team's late surge to 6th place was merely seen as evidence that criticism of Stuart and Winstanley was misguided. Essentially saying, undermining Pochettino's work a little bit, but saying, yeah, look, the players are there. Like, you could have... and I kind of get it. It sounds really harsh, but like... You know, these players were there all season. A lot of the ones, obviously, you know, players came back from injury. But, you know, Nkunku wasn't starting. Ultimately, we had Sterling, you know, Mudryk, at least one of those two available on the left. Noni available, Jackson available, Palm available. That front 4 or 5 options were always available. You had for the season that midfield 3 of Caicedo, Enzo, and Gallagher to make it work. I think there's an element there of, yes, this was there for you all season. You had no Europe. You had a pre-season. Our players are good enough to do well in the Premier League. That's kind of what they're saying. Now, yes, I'm not saying that's correct. You might think that's massively unfair. There's massive truth in things just take time. They were children. They're individuals. There was a lot of attitude problems. But they will argue, Chelsea and the sporting directors, that this is just a manager's job, you know, and this is what he should have done. Chelsea are determined to modernise. So Joe Shields is a popular figure in the recruitment team, and of course Sam Jewell is the latest addition from Brighton. They are scouting the globe, and they are nearly, of course, completing a deal for Esteval Willian at just over 60 million euros. Esteval is 17 years old. He's seen as a future Ballon d'Or winner by good judges. Chelsea's plan is ambitious. It can look crazy, but if it works, they could end up with one of the best teams in the world. So, you know, all theory, but it could be great, essentially, they're saying. So, the head coach has to swear allegiance to the recruitment team. Do not rock the boat. Do not make the mistake of thinking that Pochettino going for a very nice dinner with Bowley last Friday meant anything. I think Poch knew which way the wind was blowing. Poch, for weeks, was saying, maybe I walk away. Maybe I walk away. You know, we'll see. Pochettino wanted experienced signings last year in summer. He disagrees with the plans to sell, of course, Chalobah and Gallagher. We've spoken about that because of the profit and sustainability concerns. He was not really into Chelsea bringing set-piece coach Bernardo Cueva. On that, yeah, I didn't really align with that. I'm massively in for a set-piece coach. I've seen how effective they can be. Arsenal, like, the amount of goals they've scored from set-pieces, how good they are defending set-pieces. We are the opposite of that. All big teams have a set-piece coach, and it kind of shows you Pochettino's a little bit more old school and archaic and just wants his insular team. Like, no, you can't, you know, bring in a network of thinking minds together, and he was like against the Cueva appointment. I'm really pro it, so that's one thing I like, you know, definitely disagree with Pochettino on. Especially, is it JJ Bull from the Tifo Athletic people? He says this guy's a genius, Cueva. He's an excellent appointment by the sporting directors. I will, you know, die on that hill. So, yes, that is, when I heard he was pushing up against that, I was like, I didn't like that much. Admittedly, it can be argued that Pochettino is behind the times given how much, having a set-piece coach has helped Arsenal. There you go. Chelsea want a young, progressive manager who is comfortable with their structure. We'll do more on that in a second. They do not want fireworks. Expect them to steer clear of a combustible character, such as Roberto De Zerbi. Thank goodness, I do not want De Zerbi. There is strong interest, of course, in Kieran McKenna, the Ipswich manager, 38 years old. We'll do videos on other managers. But if Chelsea want to challenge for titles, young coaches are in vogue, but history suggests that the successful clubs build around the person on the touchline. Yes. So Arsenal build around Mikel Arteta. Bayer Leverkusen's unbeaten season is not down to their structure. It's because of Xabi Alonso. It'd be interesting because German clubs do have a good structure though. Sometimes an inspiring, demanding, obsessive, slightly unhinged character is required. Chelsea know that for sure. Of course, he references Klopp here and even Guardiola. Now, Guardiola is interesting because he does definitely have. I mean, both Klopp and Guardiola have massive system clubs. Liverpool are being rebuilt by Michael Edwards to be like Chelsea here. Of course, the network and systemic way of Man City being run was long implemented and prepared for Guardiola's arrival. And I think Guardiola probably does have a lot of control, but also he is Pep Guardiola. He's like in his own league. Do you know what I mean? Chelsea have a way to go to reach those heights. Of course, they have more instability for themselves. That's the biggest worry here. Perhaps even, of course, they've had 5 managers. At this rate, potential, we'll wonder who will want the impossible job. So there's a bit more there. I won't read it. And yes. So what do the owners want in a new manager? David Ornstein has said this this morning, I believe. He says, "It seems Chelsea will go for these newer breed of exciting managers that play a good style of football with an identity that fits their structure and connects with the fan base. A good record of keeping players fit and available also improves them. I think we will know very soon." So connecting with the fan base, fine. Pochettino understandably never connected with the fan base because I like the way he says, "I'm not going to come in and kiss the badge." He knows the optics. He's the Tottenham manager. He's like a beloved figure from Tottenham. You know, I get it. I get that. You can have a young manager that does connect to the fan base. It does help a lot. If you have a manager that, you know, thumps the badge and goes over to the fans, it is a boon to how you play. I know it sounds like superficial. I reckon it did Maurizio Sarri damage, how he just used to stand there chewing his cigarettes on the touchline. And, you know, you don't have to be a cheerleader like Mourinho, Conte or Tuchel, but it does help when the fans sing your name, when they have all of those managers have had banners in the crowd and stuff. When the crowd sing your name when they're with you, you know, Klopp, part of his magic, you know, effect was the way he connected with the crowd. Look, obviously it's a relative intangible and it's a bit of it shouldn't be top of the list. I'm not criticising Pochettino for not doing that. I understand why he didn't do that. But I also understand why there is a desire for that connectivity with the fans to try and add that additional, because, you know, these guys still run sports teams across America and stuff. They know how important connectivity with the fan base and the fans are, and how they can help the team and the product. So there is that as well. Now, the injuries thing is, I lost the source I was reading on. There was another article talking about the injuries, saying the way Pochettino trains his players is very old school, and there is a concern, maybe the review highlighted this, that his training methods is injuring players, or at the very least being a significant contributing factor to the injury list of players. Of course, that is extensive. And finally, the identity of football. Now, I think it's a bit unfair for people to say Pochettino doesn't have an identity. He does have an identity. He's always wanted to play the same football. But it seems like, again, I'm annoyed that I've lost this other article, but they want a possession style of football. Pochettino will win games, 40% possession, and there's a lot of risk, there's a lot of counter-pressing, and there's it's kind of like not as good as Liverpool football. You know, Liverpool's quite heavy metal, pressing, counter-pressing. To be fair, when Liverpool won the league, they sort of changed from Klopp's, heavy metal football and went a bit more possession. That's what the Chelsea owners want, or the sporting directors. They believe games aren't safe. And to be honest, there's one thing I've got to be real with you. I can align on here. Is that feeling of truly feeling safe in a game that you're winning. Not once this season. Maybe Everton 6-0, just because we've absolutely blew them away. But even Bournemouth, on the last day, they made 5 changes. They came to Stamford Bridge. We only needed a draw. We still let them in and score a goal. I know it was a Bernard own goal. But so many games this season that we've been riding on the vibes of youth. And like, we can win. Late winner, Chelsea. Great. Love it, boys. Exciting. But the people who own or run the club, the sporting directors, will be like, no, we can't have our blood pressure this high. We're so good. We're an amazing team. We've got great technicians. We need to keep the ball and prevent the opposition from believing they can get back in the game. Because we did that on so many occasions. Of course, the draw to Burnley, 2-2. Of course, Sheffield United, we just never really got a hold of it and put our foot on the ball. There was this perception that for Chelsea to be good and to there's also talk of they believe we can get 80 points next season if we play this style of football. I don't know where they're pulling that from. It's another like, but if we do this, we can do this. Do you know what I mean? Don't shoot the messenger. I'm by no means saying this was a good idea. I would have liked him to stay, but I'm trying, as is my job here on the channel, to dissect what has happened and the reasoning for it. And apparently, that sort of style of play thing is really, really big. So they want, not this gung-ho. Pochettino's very vibes in attack. He doesn't do like automated attacking patterns. He lets players express themselves, which works really well in a lot of ways, for a lot of players. In fact, Ancelotti does the same thing at Real Madrid, and it's worked for Jude Bellingham and, Vinicius or whatever. You can talk about that. But they believe to win games consistently in the Premier League, you need to play as such, where you are lowering the percentages of risk by keeping the ball and playing in certain ways. And they believe that Chelsea will just go up the table doing that, especially with the players that we have. Look, this won't be a popular decision. Of course, the players love the manager, but they play for Chelsea. They've signed for Chelsea, not for Pochettino. That's the way it works. You sign for a club. It's also like that old adage, you don't sign to play games, you sign to train and prove that you can play games. Do you know what I mean? We need to instill that mentality again. It's not a vibe. It's not a creche or kindergarten of vibes. It's, you know what? No, this is a massive institution. We expect you to win every week. And, get your head down and try harder, There's also an article in Telegraph. It says the new coach will have to play possession style, and it mentions Cole Palmer, actually. And look, Pochettino deserves credit for Cole Palmer. He does. Pochettino, look, I'll finish on Poch in just 1 second. So they want the new manager to be able to continue the trend of Cole Palmer and getting the best out of what they deem an absolute superstar. So there's a few requirements there. I'm not going to talk about new managers in this video. There'll be another video on that, so keep it locked. But Pochettino, this is not a hit piece on him. This is me trying to highlight, the injuries, the style of play, the character, his demands, his old school ways, how it's not working with the new guys. But he did a great job. He's held him. He leaves with respect. 2 visits to Wembley, top 6. The players respect. The fans respect. I know some people that have dealt with him in the club, and they say he's a really classy guy. He's a class act, no problems. He's a compassionate character, but he's just got very stern beliefs in his ways, and it was never going to work. And actually, Pochettino suggested, let's stop because we're all friends now and it's amicable, but that might not be the case next season. Chelsea adopted that and said, yes, that's right. And to be honest, we don't want to sack a coach mid-season again because that was really bad for us last time. So they all shook hands. They slept on it. They met this following morning and they shook hands again. And that was the end of Pochettino at Chelsea. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed this commentary piece, this explanation on what actually happened. I did a lot of research, so hopefully you appreciate that. Let me know, comment, like, subscribe. I will do future videos on potential managers, style of play, risks, etc. So keep it locked to Football Therapy, and I hope to see you back here very soon. Peace.